So I'll get started. I'm not going to take too much time because I already introduced myself. For anyone who's on the live stream, please just mute and turn off your video. And if you have any questions, put them in the chat and Tomasz will send them to me and I'll see if I can get them asked here live. Our agenda is here. Sorry if you couldn't access Meetup today to see the agenda or to register. As you all know, everything was down and it was impossible. So we'll have a couple presentations here from the Kaleido team on Besu and Hyperledger FireFly. And then from our Kiro with Nethermind about X402. And then we'll get into more conversations. You know, obviously we have the speakers here, but this can be a whole room conversation. So just jump in with questions, jump in with comments anytime. It's really informal here. We're here to just kind of connect and learn from each other. So we'll have one on privacy, one kind of more broadly on digital assets. And then we'll break. I'll stop here after the last presentation because we have the refreshments coming. So we'll take like a little break just so we can grab stuff and then we'll continue. I want to say thank you to David and Pairpoint and Vodafone for hosting us in this lovely space. So thank you so much for doing that. If you all didn't catch our 1-year anniversary just about a month ago, we celebrated online on an online event, but it's been 1 year since we became Linux Foundation Decentralized Trust, where we expanded the mission and the scope of what we were doing previously as Hyperledger Foundation, and added in new kinds of open source projects that we host. We brought in Trust over IP, which was a sister project to ours at the Linux Foundation previously. It's now under our umbrella. And as I'll mention later on, we also expanded the ability to also start standards efforts as well. What's really exciting is we have a lot of anniversaries this year because it's 1 year of LF Decentralized Trust, but in December is 10 years of Hyperledger. So Hyperledger was started by a group of organizations, about 25 or so, in December of 2015. And so we'll be celebrating that then. We wouldn't be who we are, whether it's this last year or the last 10 years, without everyone who's here in this room, who contributes, who participates, who speaks and does events, or who helps onboard new developers. Sophie was just telling me about. We wouldn't be here without our members as well, so thank you all for participating. Last year, we launched with not only the new expanded scope and new founding members, but we also had the entire Hedera code base contributed to the foundation as well. Sophie mentioned she works on Hyro. It changed its name to Hyro when it was contributed last year. And what's really unique about that is it was the first, sort of layer one to contribute its code base to an open source foundation. We are already seeing more and more of that. We have Shielded Technologies and the Midnight ecosystem, which has already committed to also contribute their code base as well. So it's a really exciting time for open development and open governance, and we encourage everybody to be involved. These are just the members that joined our ecosystem since the launch last year. So that's very exciting as well. And we hope to see more as our ecosystem expands. So thank you all for being here and being a part of it. The new code bases since we launched as LFDT, I mentioned Hyro, but we've had a couple others. Lockness, which is under our cryptographic tools and protocols. Trust over IP, which I mentioned was a sister project to us before at the LF, which works on standards in the decentralized identity space. And I'll mention something exciting that happened there recently. Credible is really exciting as well. It was contributed by a company out of India called Ironworks. Credible is our only project that is officially designated a digital public good. So that's a really unique aspect of what they're doing. And then Smoot, which has also contributed since then in the last year, which is an interoperability protocol. We've had a number of labs also contributed. If you're not familiar already, our labs are a more low requirement part of our ecosystem where you can contribute your code, start a lab. It has less requirements than a fully fledged project, and is a way to incubate projects that eventually may grow to meet the requirements of becoming a full-on project. So FabricX is very interesting because it's has a lot of new features that allow for privacy and scalability. We have a whole workshop series. Actually, the first one starts tomorrow. You can always find it on our events page or our YouTube page if you don't catch it tomorrow. But I think there's a series of 3 or 4 sessions coming up that will dive deep into what FabricX is, what it does, how you can start using it, and there to answer your questions. Paladin is another one that you'll hear about from Matt that the Kaleido team has worked on. It's been contributed as a lab and may soon become a project. They proposed it to the TAC, and they can explain that process to you if you want. As I mentioned, we've gotten some other new exciting projects, a lot in the decentralized space here, with Nightstream also being, if you're interested in post-quantum ZK technology, that would be another one to look into. So it's very exciting. We have 2 members of our Technical Advisory Council. If you're not familiar with what the TAC is, they are an elected body each year. If you've contributed to any of our projects, any of those 17 projects that you saw on the other screen, you can nominate yourself to be on the TAC. There's a whole election process that happens and each year, and we are actually in the process of that, and I'll talk more about that in a second. But this is our current Technical Advisory Council. They meet on a weekly basis. These meetings are public. You can join them. Once you get these slides, you can get the links to the weekly meetings. They're recorded. You can see previous meetings. This is where we discuss the overall health of our projects, new projects that are coming in, the debate that happens around whether or not they should come in or if they're ready, amongst many other things. So that's what open governance is all about. All this happens in the open, and anyone can participate, and not only participate and contribute, but also become a leader in this space if you get involved. So anyone can join the TAC as long as you've been a contributor to one of our projects. Enrique and Matt are both on the Technical Advisory Council. And so talk to them if you want to learn more about what that's like. We are currently preparing for that election that I just mentioned. The nominations have already started, but there's still time to nominate yourself or nominate someone else until Halloween, until October 31st. So if you need the information, I can send it to you. You'll get these slides, determine if you're eligible, and you can nominate yourself or nominate someone on your team. As I mentioned, when we became LFDT, we actually expanded our scope as well, and that includes being able to host standards organizations. Trust over IP is already one of those. We have 2 kinds of standard organizations at the LF. One is called Joint Development Foundation. It's a bit more formal. And then there's community specifications, which is a little bit more of like an incubation of standards. You know, we hear a lot about standards efforts. And our perspective on that is that, as you probably can guess, the more open, the more participatory it is, the more useful those standards will be. So that's sort of our flavor of standards efforts. There are these 3 new working groups if you're interested in sort of AI, agentic, AI and identity. These 3 new working groups that Trust over IP and the Decentralized Identity Foundation recently announced might be good for you to participate in. As we are here on one of those dots on the map, we've got a whole global meetup community. Of course, you've got the local city groups, but we also have these regional groups. In India, very strong community in India, very strong community in Brazil that Kaleido knows very well. But we also, since we're here, have a European chapter, Europe geography, not political Europe. So you can participate in it, even if you're in the UK. And so, you know, that chapter is fairly new. They have meetings regularly. There's actually a meeting on Wednesday. These are virtual, they're public, they're recorded, so you can always join or find out what happened afterwards. And go to our events on our website, our meetups on our website when Meetup works again, and you can find when the next one is on our calendar as well. So I encourage you to join that. Oh, and I include the information about the next call being Wednesday. Some other updates that happened this year as well as we had these 2 ebooks get published, one on CBDCs. This is giving a summary of which central banks around the world are using our open source technologies for their CBDC exploration. So there's a good 20 to 25 countries on there that you can see. There's an India ebook that gives you an overview of what's happening in India with our technologies as well. And then these are some of our case studies. We've got several on our website, but I just highlight a few that may be of interest. The city one, an identity related one. And then this one is one we just published recently. It's Besu is being used, you know, it's being used in a lot of digital assets and tokenization projects that you see with commercial banks, central banks, but it's also being used in this way with public infrastructure as a sort of a digital public good, really. And so we've got the EBSI here in Europe, EBSI, I call it EBSI, I don't know if that's how you guys call it, who has their network that's built on Besu. RBB is out of Brazil. It's mostly for like citizen services. And then LACchain, which actually just now kind of rebranded to LNet, has a similar public chain infrastructure for many different kinds of use cases to be built on top of. So that's an interesting thing to explore. One thing we're going to talk about later in the privacy discussion is a little bit about our privacy workshop that we had in June early this year in New York City. We've been doing these in-person workshops. Some of the people here can tell you what they're like. They're very intimate. They really focus on getting deeper into the topics. And I encourage you to join one if there's one in your city. We are thinking of doing one here in London, so I want to talk more about that during that session. But that's one of the things that we've been doing a lot of this last year. And then we have our member summit coming up. It's our 10th anniversary member summit to celebrate the 10 years of our community since it started. And if you are interested in attending, I encourage you to sign up. Some major, as we'll see in the conversation that happens later on the digital assets landscape, there's been a lot of major developments, obviously regulatory this year in the US, but many of these projects that you've been hearing about are really moving into production. This is the case study I just talked about with EBSI, LACchain, RBB, but DTCC's app chain has been getting a lot of attention this past year. Hyro work with carbon markets, the MasterCard MTN network as well. So there's a lot that's going on, and there's so much to talk about. I don't want to delay, but you know, these are sort of the topics that we are focusing on in the next in this next year, and we are here to be a convener of the broader ecosystem to dig deeper on these topics, talk about how our community, how open source can facilitate and advance interoperability, privacy, decentralized identity, etc. forward. So with that, I will hand it over to Matt, who's going to chat with us about programmable privacy on Besu.
Okay, thanks, Karen. Yeah, so my name is Matthew Whitehead. I work for Kaleido in the UK. Enrique and I are from the Southampton office, and I've been working on various Web3 open source projects for some years now. As Karen says, I'm a member of the Linux Foundation's Decentralized Trust Technical Advisory Committee. So we have these weekly meetings where we review new projects in the LFDT, and I'll be very happy to talk to people in the networking slot about the LFDT generally. I'm also a maintainer of what was Hyperledger Besu, LF Besu, and I lead Besu's enterprise roadmap. So Besu has loads of really valuable public chain and permission chain use cases. And at Kaleido, we lead the enterprise roadmap for Besu. We contribute a lot of the enterprise features, and we stand up Besu nodes for hundreds of financial institutions. I also work on Paladin, which I'm going to talk a bit about. So this session is just a 15-minute kind of recap on what's the space looking like for Besu and for privacy and what's happening in those two worlds. So yeah, Kaleido's tech stack covers all kind of Web3 technologies, from middleware, running nodes, signing technologies, custody solutions. The main focus for this is that kind of bottom open source section. So we're a big open source contributor. Enrique's going to talk a lot about FireFly, but as Cam says, Kaleido are the lead contributors currently to Paladin, which is an LFDT lab, and we're hoping will graduate to become an incubating project in the near future. So a lot has been happening in this space over the last couple of years. A lot has been happening just with Besu itself. And I think as privacy has become an increasingly important part of any real world Web3 financial application, the industry has been looking closely at what Besu had in place for some time, which was called Tessera. It was called Orion before that. And Besu had this kind of out-of-the-box privacy solution, which gave you the ability to have public transactions on a public, regular traditional EVM blockchain, but also allowed you to have groups within that who could communicate just private transactions between themselves. And that means you could create these small private worlds, and transactions were pinned to the public chain, but the worlds with these private worlds were the only members who could see the private data that related to those private transactions. And for certain use cases, that was a really good solution. It gave you the ability to show proof that what was in your private space was valid because you were pinning transactions to the public ledger. But it meant you kind of created these islands of privacy that separated out from the public ledger. They had totally their own world state. Your signing addresses had different nonces in whether or not they were transactions for the public ledger or your private ledger. So you created these private worlds, but it was very hard to build things like tokens in that world. It's very hard to show that conservation of mass of a token has been maintained when everything is isolated into this one private world that you've created with a finite number of fixed entities participating in it. So in the last year, what we saw was that people were moving on from what Tessera offered in two ways. Firstly, Besu was moving on in that it was deciding that the adoption of Tessera and these limitations meant it was starting to become a really big part of Besu's code base to maintain, yet offering very few real world benefits when people actually try to show real world use cases could be deployed with it. And also those of us who work in the privacy space and have a lot of enterprise customers who really were pushing on the what does privacy start to look like for real world applications, started to build things like Paladin and started to build things like Zito, which is another decentralized trust lab, which demonstrates how you can build zero knowledge based tokens. And Paladin pulls in Zito as one of its optional components to allow you to deploy zero knowledge transactions as part of Paladin, while also having tokens in Paladin that use a totally different trust model, like a notarized trust model where you've got bond issuers. So this is the kind of emerging landscape over the last year or so. Paladin was launched at the back end of 2024. What we're hoping to work towards is firstly that Paladin graduates as an incubating project, but also that we start to move to a proper version 1 of Paladin. We've been putting out releases regularly. We've been seeing more and more people take these combinations of technologies and prove them out in proofs of concept, prove out that they can build applications that have the right amount of privacy, the right amount of anonymity for their applications. And as we see Besu being combined with Paladin, being combined with Zito, and we're seeing that world start to gain some traction, we're moving to a picture that kind of combines these technologies together in really, really useful ways. It's worth saying, obviously, I've been talking about Besu a lot, and Paladin is really based on a Besu EVM world picture. So again, our experience of institutional organizations is that EVM generally still maintains a majority interest in building out enterprise financial deployments. And also the ecosystem for EVM is really strong. The ecosystem for standards like ERC20s, 721s and 1400s. The amount of uptake, the amount of input from the Ethereum Foundation in moving EVM forward, in progressing the state of the art in EVM, in all the DevCon and DevConnect conferences and the core dev calls where they're pushing new EIPs into the public space very regularly. So Paladin has really kind of gone with EVM is the world that allows us to build any arbitrary logic on-chain, and we can combine that with Paladin to have private tokens and on-chain logic to have programmable privacy. And that's really where everyone is pushing for. So no one really is looking at production, real world, enterprise financial deployments without having a really keen eye on, well, what's the privacy solution for that? We can prove it out in some ways without necessarily having to have privacy show the workings. But what we really need when it comes down to it is we're going to need a privacy solution that allows us to take that proof of concept and actually move it into a real production world with real money running through it, with real confidentiality between participants. So what is Paladin? So Paladin is it's a bit of software. It's a framework, if you like. It's hugely pluggable. And what it's designed to be is a framework that allows you to take what it gives you out of the box, which is a lot of things, but also to drop in, particularly that top row, to drop in your own, what we call domains that allow you to take private Paladin's framework for communicating privately between members and coordinating off-chain state with on-chain, on-public ledger transactions to build out any number of different privacy solutions that you might need. So two of the kind of the jigsaw pieces at the top, you can see include zero knowledge tokens. So that's tokens where proof of ownership and conservation of mass, conservation of balance of those tokens is done entirely using on the base ledger EVM zero knowledge proofs. And you can do that with confidentiality, you can do it with anonymity, you can do it with both. The next one along is issuer-backed tokens. So this is where a lot of financial instruments need the trade-off of some degree of privacy, but with the ability to have to meet regulatory compliance. So no issuer-backed tokens, like notary-backed tokens, is a built-in domain within Paladin that allows you to have parties exchanging tokens, but all of that is seen and coordinated by and visible to one or a small number of parties, so the notaries. So in order to mint new tokens and increase the number of tokens in the supply, that can only be done by that trusted notary. That's different to zero knowledge, where it's all done entirely by individuals generating zero knowledge proofs. The notarized model gives you that small group of parties that have visibility for audit and compliance, but allows other parties to transact privately within that. And then the final part, the third jigsaw piece there, which is where the programmability of Paladin comes in, is a private EVM world. Now that private EVM world allows you to say, what I want to do is I want to take some zero knowledge tokens, which I'm going to use as my tokenized deposits. And I'm going to have issuer-backed tokens, which represent bonds being issued. But what I want is programmability. I want to be able to do an atomic swap between them on chain. I want to be able to do DVP settlement between them. And I want all of that managed on chain. I want to maintain my privacy. And the private EVM component of Paladin allows you to build exactly that. It allows you to compose complex financial instruments being managed on chain with the right combination of confidentiality and anonymity that your particular financial instrument requires. I'll move on. I'm just going to move on to this one for a second. I'm very happy to have questions, but I don't want to take too long. I want to point out where Besu comes into this picture. So this is kind of an architecture diagram of Paladin, and I want to just partly because this is about Besu and programmable privacy. So Besu is involved in this picture in kind of two key ways. So firstly, everything that comes out of Paladin transactions, these private transactions, everything that comes out of them and is managed off chain and involves communication off chain ends up being enforced on a public ledger, a base ledger. Well, not public ledger, let's call it just a base ledger. Now that could be a public ledger, it could be Ethereum L1, it could be Linear and L2, but it could also be your own permissioned network running just Besu clients. So Besu comes in here as one of the many options for deploying your base ledger as one of the options for producing a permission chain between a group of parties, where each party then connects into that, perhaps using their own instance of Besu, running validators or non-validators or just JSON RPC nodes. And you can deploy your Paladin world entirely on a Besu-based base ledger. You'll also see it's actually built into Paladin in our private EVM domain. So as maintainers of Besu, we understand a lot of the benefits and the strengths of Besu. So what we actually do is we pull in core components from Besu code base, the EVM for executing smart contracts, and the state storage for maintaining a state, a picture of the current state within that privacy group. All of that, Paladin is using Besu. It's pulling in and reusing open source Apache 2 licensed components from Besu. And it's using that to implement these private EVMs. So we're getting all of the developer time and the testing time and the maturity of Besu in delivering that private EVM component of Paladin. I'm going to just go back one slide because I did just want to touch briefly on this, talk about the fact that we're not going to go into detail about UTXOs versus account-based models today, but I did want to just highlight the fact that Paladin takes the approach that when you look at the two typical models for creating tokens, implementing tokens, you can go with confidential UTXOs, which is the way that Paladin goes, Or you can go with just an account model where you maintain a single account for each given owner of tokens. And the key part, I think, of this diagram here to kind of drill into is that concurrency, that second from the bottom row. And when you're working with enterprise users who are looking at deploying financial instruments that include thousands of trades a minute, it's really important that you look at how does that scale. One of the key things we looked at with account-based models is it requires really careful orchestration when you're increasing someone's account balance that really slows down the maximum rate that you can do that you can transact between parties and maintain an accurate account balance for parties. So Pairpoint is a UTXO-based model, and one of the main reasons for that is that ability to parallelize. You can separate out transactions between parties and still update their balance. Sorry, I forgot 1 minute left. Sorry, okay. Always go over time. Let me skip on to just this slide, I guess then. So what does programmable privacy with Besu look like then? What we can have is we can have Paladin, where we have our tokens deployed and we have privacy between the parties within those tokens. But what we can do is we can implement entirely arbitrary business workflows. So DVP or PVP, we can deploy any EVM compatible smart contract into a private EVM world between a finite set of carefully defined parties, and you can deploy in Paladin, but ultimately on-chain enforcement of those workflows through deploying these privacy groups within Paladin, and that gives you really total kind of programmability of financial instruments using those token technologies. I think that's probably enough for that. Right. So I don't run over. Thank you very much. And yeah, happy to chat in the networking session afterwards.
Enrique?
All right, cool. Thanks, Matt, for that. All right, hey everyone. First of all, thanks for coming on a Monday evening, spending time here today. My name is Enrique Macau. I'm a software engineer at Kaleido, and I've been maintaining FireFly for a couple of years now. I'm one of the lead maintainers there, so I run all the community, all the releases, all the PRs and issues you'll see all over the place in FireFly. We're on the webinars, and in Kaleido, I'm a software engineer running our platform, working with different protocols that we support, and really supporting clients as well face to face. I want to see a big show of hands a little bit. Who has heard of Hyperledger FireFly before? Okay, we got a few. We got 6. Javi from Kaleido, of course, hasn't. And who has actually used Hyperledger FireFly before? All right, we got 2. One from Kaleido, one from non-Kaleido. Okay, so I think when I think a lot about open source projects, I always think about what is the problem space they're trying to solve, right? So right now we're talking about privacy. I really want to talk about the problem space where we created FireFly for. So one of the things with Web3, me coming from a non-Web3 world maybe 3 years ago, was the amount of knowledge you need to really understand the whole ecosystem, right? The layer 1s, the layer 2s, the different DeFi protocols, the different stablecoins, the different consortium models, the different exchanges. So we at Kaleido, we try to do that effort for the companies. We'll try to learn about those protocols, how to best use them, how to integrate with them, how to do interop with them. And one of the ways that we realized that we're doing it is we're rebuilding the same core software and infrastructure every single time for our clients. So we said, okay, why don't we build one project that has all the hard plumbing, all the learnings that we had over the course, multiple years building project for clients, and actually open source it. So the way we see FireFly is kind of like the gateway for enterprises into Web3. So enterprises might have their existing system, their existing infrastructure, and they want a standard way to be able to communicate with different types of Web3 technologies. They don't want to have to learn every single time and spin up a team of engineers to learn about a specific protocol. So what we try to do is really simplify how Web3 works. And we do this by not reinventing the wheel. So without FireFly, just to give an example, you would have to think first about, okay, what chain am I connecting to? What are the RPC endpoints? What are the methods on that specific protocol? How is the data managed on that chain? If you want to do some sort of privacy or you want to do some sort of off-chain management of data, how do you do that? You need to think about finality a lot in different protocols and different chains. When is a true transaction final? What does it mean to listen to events in a specific protocol? What does it mean to listen to balances and changes of state in specific smart contracts and different protocols? What does it mean to onboard a whole protocol into your enterprise? What does it mean? How do tokens work? How do different standards of tokens work, right? You might look at standards in Solana, very different to Solidity standard. You might look at Stellar, very different to Solidity. So how do you standardize your business so that you only need to build your business application? You can really, really focus on your problem that you're trying to solve, your real use case. So what we try to do is by abstracting all these layers of complexity and rebuilding, you get a lot of the benefits of using FireFly. And how do we actually achieve this? Is by making it really pluggable, actually. So we have a very pluggable architecture where we support different protocols and different chains. I'll talk about what's new this year, what new protocol we added. We have capabilities for native tokens and digital assets. As Matt mentioned, as part of our platform of Kaleido, we do have key management and wallets, but one of the layers that we have in FireFly is pluggability. So at a point in time, you can then maybe integrate an HSM or different key management services into FireFly. We have a model that I'll talk in a second about consortiums as a service. So you can do data privacy, very different to the privacy that Matt explained. It's more of a simpler version of Paladin with on-chain, off-chain, and hashing of data. This is one of the key important things that a lot of our users rely on is reliable event delivery, right? You really want to know when something's happened on the chain. You don't want to miss out. So we have at least once delivery in all the protocols that we support as part of FireFly, and also transaction management, right? If you're trying to rebuild an enterprise-grade transaction management engine where you have to manage nonces for different signing accounts, for different sorts of protocols, you really need to think, okay, how am I going to support this? You need a team of engineers that know about that protocol, have designed that. So we've done that hard work of building first a framework for building different transaction managers, and then people have built on top of that different implementation of that framework for EVM, for Tezos, for Fabric, and then you want to show now with Cardano that we got. So yeah, so we're enterprise-friendly, open source, multi-protocol, cloud-ready. We have Kubernetes support and Helm charts. We at Kaleido have been running a production for a number of years for our clients at very high speeds. Again, future-proof because it's super pluggable, so you can extend it as you wish in different apps. So talk a little bit about the architecture. So as you mentioned, really the bottom of it is this connector toolkit where we think 80% of the code is there, which is completely chain agnostic. So what is this? Like, it's database handling different types of monitoring transactions in different chains, nonce management, checkpoints, events. You have delivery of events, event streams, and then you can extend this with things like gas price or resubmission algorithms. We call them policy engines. Like, when are you going to resubmit? When are you willing to pay for more gas for specific transactions? And then different sorts of connectors for different types of account models and UTXO-based models. And on top of that, we have the blockchain connector API. So this is a more specific API for each protocol. So for Solidity, you will have your API and your bytecode, and you'll be able to invoke different sorts of methods in Solidity, in EVM, or you would have methods I'll show in a second in Cardano, which are very different, or even Tezos, you have another method. And on top of that, we have a series of pre-built token standards for ERC20, ERC725, ERC1155 that you can also build on top of this blockchain connector API. And then we have smart contract interfaces, which it's a way of bridging the Web3 and the Web2 world. So the way we do it is if you use a protocol that is self-describing, like AVI, which describes the functions of a specific smart contract utility, we generate open APIs so that you can integrate it really rapidly into your Web3 flow. So you don't have to think about specific Web3 SDKs that you need to integrate to your software. And then on top of that, the Gray box there's quite a lot in there. There's a whole really big orchestration engine. Because when you have many, many transactions running, you need to orchestrate them. What order are they running in? Are they done? Are they finalized? And you need to orchestrate on-chain data and also off-chain data. So there's a lot of core engineering done inside the Gray box that then different protocols don't need to re-implement. So this is the model of the consortium model where you have a shared blockchain at the bottom, shared DLT technology. You have a shared storage, which is super pluggable. At the moment, we use IPFS to distribute different identities in the system. And then we have a private data bus for sharing private data. And this is one of the models that we've been using a lot. We call it multi-party because it's basically we have different organizations that can send data on-chain and off-chain arbitrage. So what's new in 1.4? So this year we released 1.4. One of the biggest things that I was really happy about is we got a Cardano connector that was fully contributed by the Cardano ecosystem. A company called Sunday Swap, they're a DEX in the Cardano ecosystem, came along and built a FireFly Cardano connector, and it's been used by the community of Cardano to build lots of apps on it. We also upgraded our connector toolkit. We do a lot of work there to make sure we got the right plug points, the right level of streaming, and we also added patching to be able to be more performant for acknowledgement. We did a lot of work in metrics, so we had a lot of metrics with a lot of the components inside, as it's a very pluggable infrastructure. All of these components run separately, and you want to really measure the metrics of them. And then one of the things we do a lot is we work a lot with Besu. So we have a lot of performance and CLI tools that allows us to measure the TPS of running FireFly with Besu, to be able to measure they work well together. But of course, it works with any EVM chain, not only Besu. I always like to look at the numbers. There is a Linux Foundation provides the LFX insights where you can look at what are the numbers. One of the things that Matt mentioned of Paladin is we're trying to make it an incubation project. And FireFly has achieved the highest status in the LFD team, which is the graduated project, which means, to me, it means that it's a stable project. It's been running in production for a number of years. It has the right licensing, the right security. We fix a lot of CVEs. We release at least a patch every quarter with loads of fixes. So we have a pipeline of fixes, of maintaining it, loads of contributors. And as you see, we have new maintainers from Cardano that joined this year. Over 2,000 commits. The stars normally in a project, I normally see stars going really, really quickly when you release a project, and then 3-4 years after, they go steadily increase. So 100 per year seems low, but it's actually quite a lot for a project that's been running for a number of years. And we have over 65 active contributors. And we have contributors from different organizations all over the world that want to contribute to FireFly. So the Cardano connector that was contributed by Sunday Labs. There are a bunch of Cardano experts. They know a lot about Cardano. They taught me a lot. Kind of sits in that layer between the core orchestration engine, where you're managing transactions and confirmations and receipts, and the abstraction of the transaction manager toolkit and the implementation of the specific core Cardano connector. Who's familiar with Cardano in the room? 1, 2. So one of the key things about Cardano is it's a UTXO model. And the way you actually program the Cardano ecosystem is very different to the way you write Solidity smart contracts. The way I got it described to me, which was really, really fun, was in EVM, you write the programmable business logic in a smart contract and you deploy it. In Cardano, you run that business logic off-chain and the chain verifies you've done the right thing. So what this Cardano connector actually does, it runs a wasm runtime ecosystem where you run your off-chain logic and it builds a transaction for you, and then it will send it to the node to validate. So what the Cardano team have done is they have abstracted the framework of Cardano to match FireFly's framework so that they can use the same APIs to actually run transactions in Cardano. So I could talk a lot about the Cardano, but I'll recommend you check out the repo because some interesting examples there on how to build on top of Cardano. And as I said, they standardized and translated the Cardano programming model to FireFly. I think I got a minute left, maybe. So I think Karen mentioned earlier, there was a conference this year, Revo conference, one of the biggest Cardano conferences. And one of the things that the community runs, especially the company IOHK and Blockfrost, they run a July of Code hackathon. So they have loads of contributors build projects on top of Cardano and loads of different fun projects. They had think 3 prizes. It was all on stage. You can check it out. But we also run a Firefly workshop at that same event if you want more in-depth, hands-on content on how to build on top of Firefly. The final thing I always mention is join the Discord. I'm always there. If you have any questions, if you want to use the tool, we have loads of developers that help out from different expertise. Matt's in there, different SMEs from different areas, and we're also very, very, very active on Discord, on GitHub. Sorry. And finally, I think I might be able to skip this because Matt covered it for me, but we work at Kaleido, Javi, Matt, and I. What we've always tried to do is just simplify blockchain. That first part of just learning a lot about different protocols, different technologies, just making it super, super simple, enterprise grade, and we package, as Matt mentioned, the same slide, we got Firefly into our platform. So we have a version of it because it's so pluggable. We have an enterprise version that we run for our clients and integrate with all our other software stack, with digital assets platform that we have, with chain infrastructure tooling as well, and more robust side. So I guess that's it. Thank you, Scott.
Okay.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, I'd like to invite here. We'll just get this set up here. Mike, Griffin. Great. Welcome, Carol from Nethermind.
My name is Kirill. I work as head of product at Nethermind, specifically on the products which are related to AI. A few words about Nethermind. So in Web3, Nethermind is quite a big company, and it's 250 people around the world. And Nethermind, like when we speak to different people who does what, and occasionally we realize that Nethermind is already doing something like that, and we could even not know about that inside of the company because there's so many projects and so many directions. So we do research in ZK space, also in cryptography, in AI space. We do audits, consulting, building products. And just to this talk will be not about any of from our products, but just a few words about what I do specifically. So as I mentioned, for past year and a half, I've been working on AI smart contract auditor. And this is an extremely interesting space, and I can talk about this for hours. But just if you have ever written any Solidity code, so probably it makes sense to, even if it has been audited by people, even by professionals, it makes sense to go to Nethermind website, find audit agent in tools, and run it over your code. Because what people can find in their code, sometimes it's really surprising. So we saw multiple times how people have found some really stupid issues in their code that has been audited by professionals, or just recently one of banks tested it on the software from I haven't noted it, from Capital Market and Technology Association from Switzerland, and found 3 issues. One of them was high by this tool. So this is how I see that AI is changing the way we do our work, like we want it or we don't want it. And I'm really excited to do this and to speak about this. So in this talk, I'd like to share some thoughts on the standard X402, which is related to payments between agents, essentially. And specifically as a person who is not just not only looking at this from tech side, but also from product and end user side. So as a tech person, I'm extremely fascinated by the technologies and always see that I can find something super attractive and super promising, and as like all of us do. And sometimes we face that in the reality. We can see that, oh, for some reason this like doesn't exploding, or something is not so successful that we expected. Like, why? And essentially, my job is usually try to land these tech expectations to reality and to how the things are working in the end users' hands and users' experience. So, who have heard about this standard? Oh, that's very good. A lot of people. So great. I think it's because this probably was announced by a few like really notable participants of the entire Web3 and tech space. So, for instance, like it has been announced by Coinbase, but it also AWS, Anthropic, Circle, and Near were participating in this announcement. So, what is X402 is essentially it's a protocol or a standard which was created to allow participants in the network to pay for their something, not important for what, via crypto. It is not specific to any particular blockchain, so it just describes some rules. And it also based on the idea that has been presented in the HTTP just from the beginning, that there is a response code which is 402, which says that a payment is required. So, for instance, how it is supposed to work is when somebody is calling an API and sending a request, then it gets this response, the payment is required. It contains all the information regarding what is the amount of payment, how it's supposed to be paid. For instance, it should be paid in these stable coins on this blockchain to this address or something additional. Then the user is supposed to make this payment. Then either the recipient or a specific entity, which is called the operator, or probably some other name, but it can be actually a separate entity which is checking that the payment has been executed. And then there is a response. The request is repeated, and the response is executed as expected. So in that case, here is a way how to make the payments programmable and composable inside of the software without any particular entities or without any particular requirements to do the let's say KYC for an agent which doesn't have an identity, or or KYB, or for instance to fulfill the form with first name, last name for an agent which doesn't have this, or if we think that the agents is something that will be developing for something that we didn't think that it will work this way, and we get used to how things work now, we should probably assume that agents will be paying to each other for some meaningful work or for some meaningful for some products. And for this purpose, we need this way for them to coordinate, collaborate, and pay for each other's work in the standardized way. Because without that, we kind of from on one hand, we just can say that there is already a blockchain, so they can pay each other. But actually, they cannot pay each other because there is no standard on how to pay and for what you pay, for how many you pay, how to verify this, and so on. So advantages of this, like I didn't tell you, but I don't have any presentation, so because I was told that I'm going to make this talk 2 days ago. But this is an exciting topic, so I'm happy to do this without any presentation. So the advantages are kind of clear. So we can have these micropayments between agents, for instance, or agents and people, or even people between each other, but it doesn't make sense. Agents can pay, agents don't need to do KYC, and it can be easier integrated into your software when like you start building something which is supposed to be kind of paid by somebody. You don't go to Stripe and you don't go to set up a legal entity. You just like in native crypto way, you just integrate this kind of few lines of code, and it's working. But there are some issues that probably are not obvious, and I'd like to kind of talk about them a bit. So first, it's presented as a free, like there's no fees in this protocol, but essentially there is no fee only on the level of the protocol, but there are always fees inside of a blockchain transaction. And in kind of in different blockchains, the level of fees is different. And there's, for instance, on Base, from Coinbase, you have like 1 cent per transaction or something. And in like on Solana, it's even lower, and in Suya, it's lower. And it seems that it's the super appropriate way to charge, for instance, API-based services. So you create an API, somebody's calling this API, paying per request, and you get it like naturally, effectively done. But essentially, when we start thinking about introducing this into your API, we have the problem that first, it gets delayed for the time of the payment. So we have to wait either to time to finality if it's a more established blockchain, or for much faster blockchains, maybe much faster, but it's still a significant delay. So for some services, it just can be not viable. In terms of the price, it also becomes an important point, because for a lot of applications, pay per call, the price per call can be super low, which is actually comparable or even higher than the fee in the blockchains that are supposed to process these transactions. So for instance, in RPCs, where I worked previously, there is a cost of $1 per million request. So it's already cheap, kind of pay per request is already kind of cheaper than the fee on the chain. Also, you have to set the chain in which your user is supposed to pay. So it means that when you set the chain that is convenient for you as a developer, then it becomes not convenient for your customer, which cannot have these, for instance, money on this chain, because their money management is set up some other way. If you offer a lot of chains, then you get a problem that depending on the chain, your customer gets a different quality of your service because of delay between kind of which it depends on the chain. Also, there is an kind of interesting question whether it will be actually become a standard, because when we have here AWS, Anthropic, Circle, and Coinbase, they're like probably there will be OpenAI, Microsoft, and Tether, another kind of team, and I'm wrapping up. And there can be some competing standard, but at least with MCP, we see that Anthropic has developed it, OpenAI somehow supports it, and it becomes a standard. So it can be actually become a standard. So it seems to be promising. So also, what is not supported is more complex scenarios like escrow or streaming payments. So it's just not developed, but probably like it's planned. And also, if we need to get a reimbursement or get the payment back, then there's also no reverse or refund flow. And the last point is that it's not implemented, but it's something that is probably orthogonal for this, but it also makes sense to mention. In the recent standard from Ethereum, ERC 8004, which is kind of essentially trustless agents or identity for agents, it is this standard is mentioned as the kind of supported or complementary thing that just makes it easy, that makes it clear that, okay, if we have this on Ethereum and it is supported, but what is this standard for, like, again, all other chains? And well, that it seems that there is a space for it. So overall, it looks like this is a promising standard, a lot of things to do, but it seems that something is beginning to happen in this space. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol, and thanks for jumping in last minute. Appreciate it. Is there any one quick question about Carol's talk or Enrique's?
Oh, no, it's actually Carol.
Sure.
Maybe this is the fun stuff.
Could you ask your question a little bit louder?
I'm sorry. Because DC was sound is so great. DC at some point must be.
Yeah, absolutely. Thing to discuss. Anything about Enrique's presentation, or you had?
Yeah, I just want to ask. First of all, was this launched with Google? As I understand, it's Coinbase. Yeah, they say AB2 is.
But it is a different peak. It's not kind of competing, or it's a separate part.
Who's not using smart contracts? They put their own version of it.
Well, so for AB2, they describe a different part of the workflow, but in the part which is related to the payments, this can be one of the implementation, because by default for like credit cards, internet payments, or crypto, which can be done this way.
Anything else?
We get slides
Huh?
from Enrique.
Yes. Anyone who attended and signed up, will get the slides. And if you weren't able to register, then just email me and I'll send it to you. I just wanted to come back real quick to Matt, because I got a question online that I didn't see before. So is Paladin operating as a roll-up or as a series of smart contracts? I'm assuming you're exclusive to Ethereum, but what about bridging to other chains?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So it's not acting as a roll-up. It's doing some things that are quite like what roll-ups do, but it's not a roll-up. It deploys Paladin specific or domain specific contracts on the base ledger. And in terms of bridging to non-EVM worlds, that's kind of out of scope of Paladin's job. There are lots of ways of bridging between protocols, bridging between chains, and ways of doing that atomically. But Paladin, being an EVM specific technology, is only really suited to doing those things within an EVM world.
Okay, great. So much, Matt, for answering that question from the live stream audience. So let's take a short break. I think there's refreshments here, David. So let's grab some refreshments. I'll let you know how long it is because I need to talk to you about how much time we have left. Since we started a little bit late, but please feel free to grab some refreshments, and then we'll come back here and have 2 more panels before we close for the day. All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. All right.
Be great. Oh, look at this. Yes.
Yeah, it is. It is that. It is that. Yeah.
Great seeing you.
Yeah. How are you? So, in the BIS? No, I didn't go. Hard Montgomery left. Yeah, did you see him there? Did you see any of his sessions? Yeah. have a conversation on privacy. What questions do you have? What are your thoughts? It's obviously a very hot topic right now in this space. So I have here with me Dr. Jacob Mendel from Parfin and Rails and Adi Ben-Ari from Applied Blockchain. We held, as I mentioned earlier in my talk, a privacy workshop in New York City.
Sorry, but I think this affects other people. There's like an now accessory to connect.
Oh no, don't allow.
Go, go.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Sorry, that's my fault.
So we did a privacy workshop, and this is a unique event that we've started to do because we have all these institutions, financial institutions specifically, are coming into this space wanting to understand how they can leverage it. But they've got all these requirements, and then we have all the people, the technologists in our community who are building things, and maybe having to engage with these institutions. And so we started doing these workshops initially for Besu. We started the Besu for Financial Services workshops, and they were successful. And we saw how beneficial it was to bring the institutions, the banks, together with our community of technologists that are building the technologies that these banks want to explore. So we then ventured into doing an interoperability for financial services workshop. Did that earlier in the spring in February in New York City as well. And then privacy, because that was really growing to be such an important topic. And so I want each of you to introduce yourselves. Tell us a little bit about what your lens is on privacy. How are you all working on it? And then we'll kick it off from there.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, everybody. And being so late here, well, first of all, you see, I don't wear a watch. This is part of cybersecurity, not on free time. Because, these smart devices or these IoT devices is fully trackable, and as less you carry is better. So,
wear a mechanical watch.
no, I need to be very careful because this is transmit online, but I can tell you there are places where I go, I pass like a security detector, like in the airport, and when I enter, they give me a paper and a pencil. And on the way out, they take it. So I enter like naked and go out naked. Okay? So this is just a focus on the sharp on. No, lucky here because this is other form. It's okay. It's like yes, it's well connected. But the idea around the privacy and the future is in Parfin and especially on Rails, we are looking at privacy as one very important component because we do not focus just on privacy. Privacy is important, but we need to look at the overall requirements of our institution and client. And what they are looking, they're looking for scalability, they look for performance, they want to see all the compliance to different regulatory in place. To come to a bank and say, look, we have privacy, the best one, and you can say all the acronym that you want in the world regarding all the advanced cryptography and encryption. You say, yes, thank you, and show you the way to do it. You really need to provide a very comprehensive solution, which include everything inside, including the keys management, the security, and the protocol, and the business logic need to be part of it, and the scaling, and how it can be audited. Just today, we started this session today that AWS was down and no one was able to register. How to really maintain the BCP, the business continuity plan in place? How you make everything resilient? And we are talking about AI all the time. How AI is going to be connected to this in the positive form? Because when we are talking about AI on blockchain, really you think that agent will be currently transacting on behalf of us? Let's see what banks are currently really doing with AI. They just want to see efficiency. They want to see all traditional processes becoming much more efficient, less human. reducing errors, become really active on money. Think about the traditional activity. But AI is moving into this domain. And also we are working on AI and other companies. So in all, we are looking on end-to-end security, privacy, and post-quantum. A lot of people ask me about the post-quantum. We discussed this also when we were in New York, and we will discuss this also here about how we really provide the future of all the digital world that we are having.
Okay, so I'll give some background so you know that's where I'm coming from with my views. So Apply Blockchain is a blockchain development company. So we've been developing applications for clients for 10 years. Before Apply Blockchain, I worked here for 5 years, Vodafone. After that, I worked for Lloyds for a couple of years, and then I started the company. And our biggest client now is Shell, and the second biggest is DHL. So we work with enterprises across the board. We also work with lots of crypto companies, but that's kind of in the DNA. In terms of privacy, we started working with private versions of Ethereum, actually before we had Besu, before we had Paul. And that's what we recommended to our clients, and then started adopting the projects as they evolved. Which we looked at solving privacy from day one because we worked with enterprise clients. And in 2019, we launched a ZKP protocol that worked on Besu and on Fabric, and it was called K0. And this was a zero knowledge protocol. You could say maybe something very simple of what Pairpoint is now, the very sort of entry level version. What that gave us is a view of the complexity. And in many ways, the limitations at the time, and now things have expanded, but just how difficult it is, just how bespoke it is. And there were other things that we saw. I met some of the founders of Zcash at the time. And they revealed to us that, I don't know how many people know the story, but Zcash, when it was first launched, it had a 9-month release cycle. And very shortly after it was launched, the developers noticed a bug. And they had a dilemma of whether to reveal the bug immediately and just issue a fix, or whether to wait for the release cycle. And they ended up that the bug would have enabled people to just go through the privacy and actually mint tokens. And they ended up waiting for 9 months. And for me, the lesson there is that this stuff is so complex that actually there could be like major bugs in it, and we probably wouldn't know. So I think we need to look at this. We need to look at the tech and not just make like big assumptions. This tech is like this, that tech is like that. There's actually the whole thing is quite a big problem to solve. Where we ended up, I guess where I'm getting to, is we ended up using TEs, right, which is a hardware-based security approach. And the reason we went down that route is because for our types of customer that we're serving, we really ticked all the boxes. We can run Ethereum-compatible blockchains, and we like Besu. Besu was the first one we actually tested with. We now run a layer 2. Went live 2 months ago with an OP stack layer 2. The blockchain itself is unmodified, right? It runs as a layer 2, so it's linked to Ethereum. It's backed up by Ethereum essentially. All of the trust assumptions for the assets are based on battle-hardened standard code, right? And we don't link the privacy to that. And so the privacy is handled separately by the hardware. And that has its own trust assumptions, which has its limitations. But we're kind of viewing this as, in the same way as you see optimistic rollups now, they're not perfect, right? If you look at ZK rollups, they will supersede optimistic rollups. And we think that privacy in the future will be a combination, just like privacy today or other security technologies that we have today. So we think an interesting place to start is with TEs, because actually you can get complete privacy, fully programmable privacy. You can use all of the Ethereum tools. So we looked at, with FireFly, we haven't tested this, but I'm guessing that there would hardly be any modifications needed in order to use it with silent data. We've actually integrated another tokenization platform, and we just use the Ethereum adapter that we had. Right, so you can use standard wallets, standard contracts. There's no extensions, there's no custom types. It's all just vanilla. So you get a ton of benefits. So that's where we're coming from. I wanted to add while I'm here a couple of other things. First of all, we're in the Digital Pound Lab right now, just going into that. Just something else related to the Linux Foundation. We've developed for our other projects as well an open source passkey wallet, right? That supports account abstraction, ERC 4337, and we're now in the process of submitting that to the lab. So that's an open source ERC 4337 wallet that other people can use. We've used it on all our projects, on many of them. So hopefully it'll be useful to the group as well.
Thank you, Adi. Thank you. So I wanted to see if just initially there were any thoughts or reflections that you all had from the experience of being at the workshop and hearing from, because we had about 2 days, we had at least 30 speakers from various different perspectives of privacy. Because that's one thing I want to touch on. You kind of already started, Adi, that there are different ways to do this. And I think a lot of what's happening right now is institutions are trying to, there's a lot in terms of lining up requirements and also definitions, because privacy can be defined very, very differently. My colleague Hart Montgomery, who's our CTO, you may know him or have heard him speak. I mean, that's one of the first things that I always hear him say in conversations, like, okay, first, what does privacy mean to you? Because until we understand that, the conversation really can't go anywhere because there's so many different definitions. So yeah, share with me your thoughts on these different definitions and the options that are out there as a result.
Okay, this is a long question.
Sorry.
An easy one, yes. Let's split into 2 parts. I like to keep the 2 similar. Regarding the event, I will split it the event itself into 3 parts also, so it will be easier to focus on each. So the first thing was the academic part. There was people from the academia coming to present their research. For me, this was fascinating, okay, because I really connect myself to the math, and there was a lot of things. I don't know about the rest of the people, but for me, this was the most interesting session. And later there was different companies coming and presenting their portfolio, which is interesting, you know, to see what the competitors are doing. So nice always to see and take pictures. Fascinating immediately to send them to our colleagues. And the last thing was around use cases, which I think this is the most important. Because look, in the end of the day, when I wake up in the morning, what I want to do? I want to solve problems. If I don't solve a problem, it's not interesting. So people and companies are talking about the different use cases. I find it in very, opening my eyes, saying, oh, they have something that solve a problem to someone. If it solves a problem to someone, someone is willing to pay you money. And why we're doing this? To publish a paper? No, it's okay, you can come to my faculty and I can help you. No, we want to make money. And the idea to make money is to solve a problem that people will be willing to pay for it. And this comes to the point of what is privacy. When you go to different institutes, different organizations, even different banks, their definition about privacy is different. Look on different use cases. Privacy in the US is different from privacy in UK, sorry. Of course, when you talk about encrypting the data, nice. Compliance to what? Which rules and compliance you need to be compliant to? GDPR, MiCA, or DORA, or there is some missed recommendation or something around that? Or if you come from another country. Every place has its own definition about what you need. And also there is local regulation, which above and top of all of this together. Then what you're building, you need always to customize it specifically for the requirements. And then later you need to look how to provide it. So I love your presentation, really. This is always very interesting. But I always think about, as in the past, I was in JP Morgan, I was in State Street, and I was seeing, at least 2-3 companies a week. The idea is how this can be integrated in our product, on our processes inside the bank. You know, the onboarding process for a bank take between, if you are really super fast, it will be 8 months, really super fast. If you are an incredible company, normally 10 months plus. And then by the end of this process, the startup company, it's already dead because we killed them. So I'm thinking how to make it simple for them, that it will be on board. And you're right, and this is also for us. You know, we are coming from just around the table with the engineering and Slevaja here about open source. We are going to open source, for example, one of the key points of our privacy enigma that it's very well known and famous. This is going to be open source shortly, and if you have any problem, come to Slevaja. She's here. She will make sure that it's going to be open source. Take the name. So this is the idea, you know, for us around and I think the session there, for me, it was important what happened after the session, okay? When we left the event on the first day and the second day, especially the second day, there was more people on the second day. So sorry, we need to organize the room differently. There was a lot of people on the second. Sorry, it's not a long answer, okay? But in the second day, there were more people and they organized the room differently. And there was a lot of connection, a lot of use cases. People were doing. I don't have words. I don't know how much I'm talking. But I think that the connection which happened on the second day was very, very important. We talk about a lot of things. It's very interesting. And I encourage to have multiple breaks so people can talk. This was very, very useful.
So how was it? What are your thoughts on the different definitions of privacy, the different perspectives that you saw while we were?
Okay, I guess, yeah, first of all, on the event for us, it was genuinely fantastic. Right? First of all, it's in a short period, you really get a cross section of who's done what in the industry. Right? It was fantastic for that, and it goes in depth. So a bit like some of the presentations we saw here earlier. If you're technical, you can get, I think, a lot out of it. If you're not technical, you get a good broad overview. And we also met companies that we're still working with now that we followed up with on that event. So it's very useful, very good. In terms of privacy, I split things into three. There's a theme. I think before, I'd say blockchain, when we first started, was privacy on public blockchains through Zcash, Monero, and so on, meant hiding everything. And this was either you think you deserve privacy as an individual and therefore you don't want anybody to see anything you're doing, or you're hiding something, right? And that's still around, but let's say that's one use case. And the other is we had private blockchains, right? We had Besu, the classic model, which gave institutions privacy, but has limitations around creating tokens and this kind of functionality. So that's where we started. Really. What we see, I guess, what drives us from the beginning is what I would call commercial privacy. Right. So I mentioned to you the companies we work with in the background. I think of us as a company as well. I want us to use blockchain for everything. Right. I want to use stable coins. We already receive half our revenue in stable coins. Right. I want to receive all our revenue in stable coins, but I don't want all our customers to see each other's payments. Right. I want to pay payroll. Right. I want to hold our treasury. We're now bringing the Archax Aberdeen money market fund into silent data so it can be traded privately. And we want to hold that token as applied blockchain because we have some cash in the bank. Some of it will be stable coins now. And we want to go in and out of the money market fund. And when we need to pay an invoice, come out of the money market fund and pay the invoice. Otherwise, we get interest, which we can't get today from the bank, right? From the money market. So I can already see like use cases for us as a company doing this stuff. But I don't want everybody to see our treasury in real time. Yeah, for commercial reasons, right? Somebody could say, "Yeah, well, what do you mean it costs this? I can see you've got this in the bank." So I think for a business to operate, you need commercial privacy. And I want businesses to use blockchain because I think the efficiencies are there, and that's where I think we'll end up. That's where I think a lot of the use cases are. So that's our perspective. That's why we're.
Let me open it up since we don't have too much time for this conversation. We have one more panel left. Are there any questions, thoughts you all have on privacy? Obviously, Matt had a whole presentation about privacy as well, and they do work on focus on that a lot as well. How is this touching on what you all are thinking about in whether it's Bank of England or Banco do Brasil. How are you all thinking about this, and what are you curious to understand about it? What are your questions? Not necessarily that you need answers to right now, but just what are your questions? Go ahead.
So we did
And speak up a little bit so that the online people can hear.
so we did a privacy project called Project Ubyx for BIS, and that's for Swiss National Bank. It was the first quantum step app which would hold a set of currency, and that will keep customer cash like this. The privacy means that it is the sent to the cash world. In the sense, when you withdraw your money, the bank knows how much you withdrew, and then how you spend, that bank knows. It was the same concept. So that gives you the privacy, because Swiss National Bank thought that if we are taking the physical just away, the digital world will have same privacy. Now, for that, but then coming back to your point, what is the commercial application of that? And it turns out that although people are looking for this kind of privacy, but nobody actually bothers. Central banks and government thinking, oh, privacy is a law and all of those things. The reason I proved that this way. So I was a chief architect in Ubyx Bank, when we were there. So I asked my boss, Gary, he said, Gary, is there a way, like at this moment, when you see your bank statement, you see all your transactions, right? And then you see in the YouTube, there is two services. One is ad, and then if you pay, there's no ad. So I said, is there something possible? Like if a customer pay you £1 per month, then in the statement, there's no transactions. Because we will implement the privacy. So the customer get cash-like privacy with the same technology developed for Project Ubyx. And the guy's answer was no, which has same I did with the DNB Bank, that CIO and CX or whatever. So this is a nice piece of technology. We did it for Swiss National Bank, but nobody will pay for it.
My answer to that would be that the banks are there. If you ask the bank, you'll get the answer from the bank. But the banks are there to serve their customers.
Yeah.
So the question is, what do their customers want? And what would their customers do with this technology with or without the bank? Right? Yeah. What will somebody else offer their customers that their customers might want?
So no,
that's
gone to the even the ZZ, my son, they don't care. But they like the offers people are giving them. Like they will spend the card. They don't care whether they get a cash like privacy. I would like to give you another angle for this. When we are talking about the next generation of the crypto, okay, and I'm looking not on people in the age of this room. Sorry, okay, I'm talking about the young generation. This is the future of the crypto. Okay, we have already history for the crypto. The young generation, which is the 16 plus to 30, they are the future that we need to focus on with their to do with the money. And a good example is to look on South Korea, what is happening there around the future. Their life start and end in the mobile phone. Everything in the mobile. So whatever, if you talk about wallet and payment and privacy, check what they are doing on the mobile phone. Because if you start to think about, let's ask a bank about privacy of their users, how much they know about the young generation, the bankers. Maybe. They focus today on the mobile phone. They think about privacy, go check Instagram. Check what they're doing on the social media. They wake up in the social media, they go to sleep with the social media. So what privacy do you think? I can tell you anything about, you want to check out my son? I don't ask her, I don't know. I go to the social media and I say, oh, my son is there. This one is great. This is the future. Yeah. And when they buy something or sell something, everything is happening on the mobile. So the idea around privacy and wallet, as you are talking about TE and stuff, need to be around it. So if the wallet in the mobile create the privacy for the user, perfect. This is the direction that we need to think. They are not going to change something else and now do and use another server. They need the mobile phone to be secure for them. The privacy is coming from the mobile and end.
I'll say a couple of things. When your son runs his own business, then he'll probably start caring.
Yeah.
That's one. Two is, I think these things are like pendulum swings. I think maybe it won't be the kids that are now 16, it might be their kids. Will look at their parents and say, what were you crazy? What were you doing, putting all your information, all your data out there? Because people only care about this stuff when things go wrong. Right? And you can already see things going wrong, right? All the data thefts and all the identity theft and all this stuff. That could easily get to a saturation point where people go completely the other way.
Yeah, but I was inspired when same thing because we did multiple projects for BI, so inspired by privacy, like particularly Swiss National Bank, right? But then when you try to monitor, I say it's only a single one talking about it.
Today you go to a business and you say to them, "Hey, we're going to help you so you can't see all of the data that you currently have." What? Right? So nobody wants privacy themselves as an organization, right?
And there is no one solution which should work. Something that you need to focus where you want to address this. And we are talking about the new era of banking and financial institutes. Focus around where you can want a solution, then focus. What is the age? How did the later builder currently immediately to switch a bank totally to this? It will never happen. Never.
Yeah, so I really like what Adam said earlier with regards to the, sorry.
Just speak up a little bit. Well,
Yes.
for online, yeah.
So I really like what you said earlier, Adi, with regards to if you get paid, etc., your treasury and so on, you get paid in stablecoins, and that will only increase in the future. You definitely need privacy on that for sure. I really like what Jacob said earlier, but I think we need to address the we get a lot of these startup companies in the crypto native space. When they're now that they know that the regulations are coming in, the institutional flow of money is coming in, now they're trying to pitch a lot of the banks. But what tends to happen is while they're building these products on the crypto native side, they're trying to plug that into the bank. It just doesn't fit. A lot of them just don't have the regulatory and compliance kind of expertise or risk management expertise and so on. So they find it very, very difficult. What I would suggest if you are building a startup company, whether it's in privacy or not, you're trying to enter the banking sector, it's always good to have like a design partner. So you said earlier, Jacob, if you're lucky, 8 months is probably it's a very fast onboarding process to get into a big global bank. We're talking about 15 months average, basically. So if you're a startup, it's quite important to get a design partner, and you can be onboarded very, very quickly. Now, that's what we done at Nethermind recently, actually. So we were talking to a global Tier 1 investment bank, and now we're working on 3 potential use cases: compliance, not building, compliance, blockchain loan setup, and also we're working on a little bit what you touched on earlier around the blockchain fixed connectivity. But we get in these use cases, these problem use cases by the bank, basically, rather than trying to create a product and trying to sell it up later on. We actually working with them to give us the use case. The one thing I was going to ask Jacob is what do you guys see as the main use case for privacy in financial services? Because if you take zero knowledge, for example, or TDUs or NetIssues or whichever privacy solution, that can be applied both in the blockchain context, but my understanding is there's also many different use cases within the bank that falls outside the blockchain space. But what do you guys see from the privacy perspective as some of the key use cases that these financial institutions are discussing with you guys today?
And briefly, because that'll be our last question.
Okay, so should I say it already twice?
First of all, just before I go to answer that question, I wanted to mention layer 2s, because we're in a fairly technical forum, and I think layer 2s already provide a level of privacy and isolation, or they can, especially for enterprises. So I think that's an interesting pattern to start with, because we've worked with enterprises and financial institutions where you can set it up with all the controls, like they used to in a private blockchain, but now they're actually rolling up to the public without giving anything away. So I think the layer 2 is an interesting model to start, even before you overlay these types of privacy solutions. Then quickly, in terms of
Layer 2 is falling on. Yeah, but be careful.
we want to check it's a bug. I think in terms of use cases, I've lost my thread now.
Compliance, maybe?
Sorry, not necessarily pure blockchain. I'd probably go to the broader enterprise space. So we work with a vehicle manufacturer where we're sharing data between parties in an ecosystem, right? And that's vehicle data. Working, I mentioned with DHL, that's in healthcare, where it's healthcare logistics data between partners. So this enables like an ecosystem play based on privacy, but using the kind of technologies that we're talking about. Financial institutions, the nearest thing we're seeing is probably things like AML and travel and these types of things being investigated, but not as close to, not production like these other two.
Very quick.
Very
Clean
quick.
them up. One, 3 use case.
Very quick. In our company, we really think that there is no one solution which we support both, the private chains for banks and also the public chain. Okay, so there will be a bridge between them, or multiple bridges around that. But when you're talking about banks, in the scale of banks, or their own private network inside their own jurisdictions, based on one central banks controlling all of them, then privacy look in one dimension around that. And for that case, our focus is specifically on L1 to really provide them the throughput, the security, the resilience around that. This is one thing. And the public chain is a totally different beast, which is required their own privacy around this. So, but the idea is, and I will take this fast forward, okay, for the future. And this is a combination about traditional stuff, what is happening with MPC, FHE, technologies outside the blockchain. Okay, maybe I will say something here that maybe my colleagues also, I hope that they will not. We are in a transient period. Okay, what we are talking here, it's recorded. Check this in 2 years. And we say, well, guys, look what we think about it. It will be history. This period currently about what will be the future of blockchain and the traditional banking and how the future will look. Very hard to predict what will happen in 2 years. Most of all, still, 2 years, I don't know what will happen in 10 minutes. The idea around this, for example, if I can look, it will come together. That's me. The edge computing, the future of edge computing, the future of AI, and the future of blockchain will be together. These 3 components together. Already we are seeing the major banks. Check what the biggest banks are investing today. AI and edge computing. This is what they are mostly investing now. Did I say blockchain? No. Compute. Yes. Edge computing. This is the future generation of distributed ledger. The edge computing. When you combine all of this together, this is where they are going. And there you will see the FHE part in the edge devices. There you will see the MPC, and you will see the agent running on the edge devices. This is the future, how it's going to be. If I'm wrong, in 2 years, you will find me. I'm here. You will find me and you say, Jacob, you were wrong. Okay? But this is the direction that we are saying that things are going. So this is why we build the technology and institution. We really want to build something which is going to be sustainable, something that when you provide it to the banks today, they can switch something else. Everything is open source, modular. I like your approach a lot. This is the right approach to building. Everything is modular, that you can replace blocks with your own algorithm, replace it according to change of rules, regulation, government change. Let's assume something changing. This is the direction that we are also building, and everything post-quantum specific.
Thank you.
Let's come back in 2 years.
I don't think it's like in 2 years. But you brought up a really good point, Antonio, about there's a lack of communication and cross-pollination there. we do not have enough time to get into this topic, of course, clearly. But we do plan to do a workshop, another privacy workshop, probably here in London, next year. And so bring to me, because I'll be organizing it, your questions, what you think was missing from the first one, or what you think we really need to focus on, so that we can design an event that really is helpful to move things forward, even in this transitory period where we're still figuring things out, and maybe it all will be relevant in 2 years. So thank you all for your questions. I want to move on to our last panel. We are a little bit over time, so I apologize for that. So please stay for the last and final discussion. And again, it'll be an open forum just like this one was. So thank you. I'd like to welcome David Palmer, Javier Garcia, and Kenny. Please come join us. Okay, thank you. I will plug it in. Yeah.
Excellent. Javier, Kenny, really nice to have you here in London. Discussing what I think is an important topic, which is digital assets. Right? Last week was Digital Asset Summit. What we're seeing due to geopolitical factors is injection of urgency into tokenization and stablecoins, RWAs, and a big rush for it. How do you see the landscape evolving in the next 12 months? This go to go.
Sure, stop. Go for it. Good. Okay, so I think it really depends who you're talking to. If we want to focus on the financial services industry, I do agree that there has been an acceleration of topics mostly related to stablecoins. And we see that happening everywhere. It's not just the US. We see regulations being passed, not just, as I said, in the US. We have had ECA for so long time here in Europe. But similarly, we see Hong Kong just progressing a lot, Singapore, and all the jurisdictions are doing their own thing as well. But I think something that is happening, and it probably something that is kind of linked to stablecoins, is that banks are now understanding that they really need to move. And we tend to see these days more conversations around tokenized deposits compared to stablecoins, because banks really understand what deposits are, that's their own bread and butter. And they just need to understand that stablecoins are coming, it's a thing. They're going to be regulated, they're going to go and bite into their balance sheet. So they really need to have something to defend against that. So that's one part on
tokenized deposits this year.
Yes. Well, it is already today, but it's just progressing very, very fast. And I think the coolest thing that we're looking at tokenized deposit is that it is not just commercial banks interested into them, but also central banks, because central banks are interested into fostering the whole economy around tokenized deposits. Yeah, I know, but in reality, they are all into the same game, because money today works in a two-tier system between central bank money and commercial bank money. So tokenized deposits don't work if you don't have an interbank settlement between all of them, and that's central bank money. So that is one side that is very active these days, and the other one, which is completely outside the money leg, it's on the security side. We see a lot of institutions looking into collateral. So how can we make sure that all these securities that all of the banks have been issuing throughout these years, they can be mobilized? How can I use all these assets to pledge them as collateral and get more money from the central bank, or use it for an intraday repo with another counterparty? And this collateral move is super interesting as well, because that one is involving all the players in the industry. It's involving the FMIs saying, I need to have something. I need to have an infrastructure for collateral. It's involving central banks, because collateral is directly involved in all their open market operations with banks, obviously banks, because they are the ones that are willing to just lend that collateral or borrow money, depending on which side they are. And finally, asset managers, because they are seeing that their tokenized money market funds is becoming a very nice collateral, because they can just earn interest while stablecoins are not allowed, even though they can.
Okay, so tokenized deposits, which is banks bridging the gap between bank accounts, bank deposits, and the token world, and collaterals. Anything else?
I think that's already.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, let's say the election and everything that followed was obviously an accelerant, but I think that what it really did was make people realize that they had to act now. So on a lot of different fronts, and Abby mentioned this, it's people have been thinking about tokenized deposits and talking about tokenized deposits for a long time, and people have been thinking and talking about privacy and doing things in the privacy space, and now they realize that they need to have had this implemented yesterday, and that the time is very short. So we've seen in the last 11 months, 5 years worth of progress or more of the previous 5 years. And so people are somewhat scrambling to find solutions that they knew that they needed, but they didn't put enough effort into getting over the line at the time. And it's kind of a funny place to be in, where we know what's required, but don't quite have the solution, or don't quite have the solution implemented. And it's everyone feels the pressure to get it right very quickly. I think it's a really interesting place to be. Yeah, 2 years from now, see where we land, but the direction of travel is pretty clear that a lot of stuff is moving on chain.
Yeah, I mean, if we look at you know, the various aspects of this, right? So obviously, the question on CBDCs or stablecoins, right? Pros and cons, right? Which one's going to win? As you see, the Genius Act in the US has officially pushed stablecoins. You'll see the EU reluctantly, and the UK, who are both reluctantly going. So first of all, we had the headlines: individuals £10,000 worth a year of stable coins, businesses 20 million. Now they're sort of backtracking. Both sides saying we're going to take that off. So obviously there's a reluctance in Europe for stable coins. But as you said, you know, the ship has sailed. But CBDCs, right? There was over 142 countries that were CBDCs. So if we're going to tokenize money, do you see CBDCs having a role or not?
I think, again, in the previous panel said, you know, deliver something that your customers want. I think that some CBDC projects have not delivered a solution that their customers, the end users, were really looking for. I think the House of Lords said it, you know, CBDCs are a solution looking for a problem. I don't think that that's always the case. I also think separating wholesale and retail CBDCs is important. Wholesale CBDCs are quite interesting, fast, doing some interesting things in that regard. But I think that people tend to frame all of these digital currency formats as wars, you know, CBDCs versus stablecoins versus tokenized deposits. When in reality today, we've got cash, we've got central bank reserves, we've got bank deposits, we've got e-money. We already live in a world of 4 different standards of formats. Plus we've got, you know, debit cards versus credit cards, Visa versus Amex. All of these different formats of money work in a very interoperable system and use different things for different requirements.
But isn't the point for, you know, having a digital form of money for the new digital world, right? As we move into AI and we move into blockchains and digital assets, is the old type of money, cards and bank deposits, going to be usable by agents and digital transactions?
I mean, cards probably not. Like, we don't use checks, but the point that I'm trying to make is that it's not.
That's not us, by the way. That's a different company.
So the point is that it's not digital money format A versus digital money format B. It's that there will probably be space for a lot of different types of money. Stablecoins living alongside tokenized deposits used for different use cases. Yes, everything's going digital. Everything's going potentially on chain. AI is going to play a huge role here. but it's not probably not a winner takes all in terms of format or in terms of participants. So, 16,000 people today can issue a Visa card.
It's more of a transformation and transition.
It's a new technology standard, but it doesn't necessarily invalidate frameworks that have been around for hundreds or thousands of years before that.
I just have to agree. So
We can do that on the.
no, but I'm gonna explain. I'm gonna explain why I do agree, because there's always going to be different forms of money. We have them today, and they will be in the future. I think it's also critical to split between the retail and wholesale part on CBDC. We see many projects on the wholesale side because banks need to settle between themselves. They have to settle between themselves. The retail side really depends on where you are. Examples, for example, here in Europe, there's a lot of continental Europe. There's a lot of big push to have digital euro just released for everyone. But what people don't understand is that when people start moving their balances from commercial banks to the central bank, there's going to be a problem. So we have this battle between the commercial banks and central bank and how money is going to be moving between themselves, and they haven't solved that yet. So we'll see how that plays out. Another important thing, talking about what's next, is that we've seen some changes about how people frame CBDCs. People don't talk about CBDCs anymore. They talk about tokenized central bank money.
Tokenized reserves.
Or tokenized reserves. So I think there's also a lot of playground around how
You can have a CBDC without blockchain, or you could have.
If we go back to how the European Central Bank is framing that, today, euros at the central bank are happening with digital systems, so like Target 2, etc. So in reality, it's already CBDC. It's just that it's not happening through a blockchain rail. But just talking about why we still believe that CBDCs are going to be a thing, whether they're called CBDC or something else, is because there's a pressing need for commercial banks to settle between themselves on a Saturday night, right? That's something that is needed. So LTS systems are still blocked by operating hours, and that's something that's going to change. Crypto is changing that, stablecoins is changing that. We'll see a change in the future as well. So I do agree there are going to be multiple systems, multiple forms of money in the future, but they're going to come at different pace. Some of them will be ready in the next months, others will not.
Probably,
So yeah, let's for conversation. So it's interesting to me that you said you're seeing more tokenized deposits. Maybe that's because it's more of an internal thing, I guess. But I feel like the perception or the conversation, maybe Kenny knows this very well, since we're more on the stablecoin space, is that there's potential of now we're kind of going to go back to like 2017 when there was, all the ICOs. We're going to go to like just everybody has stablecoin, everybody's launching their stablecoin, right? So is this something that we think are going to be happening at the same time, or are people going to be doing both?
both what?
Tokenizing their deposits and also launching stablecoins, or is it?
Or they complement.
Yeah, or is it one or the other?
They complement. So the tokenized deposit is a medium of exchange, right? So you're tokenizing money for transactions. The stablecoin is a medium of exchange. So you're tokenizing money for transactions. The tokenized deposit is just a means of linking that, in my view, to your bank account, right? So you can have an end-to-end flow from bank to tokenize money to another bank.
Yeah,
That's my
so
question.
are the banks focusing their resources on both at the same time? Are we going down both avenues, or do you really see more towards one right now?
I can give you my view, and hopefully it's the same.
You guys disagree.
I'll try to. So the main reason why banks are pushing more tokenized deposits is, first of all, it's something they understand, something that is already regulated, something that gives them more yield. Because in reality, we need to understand how deposits work. You use deposit money to your bank and they lend it to someone else and they can grab a higher yield. With stablecoins, you're just getting the yield from the treasuries in the background. One of the reasons we believe a lot of banks are pushing more towards tokenized deposits is because in reality, if they don't earn money with stablecoin, they have all the sources within the bank to just fund the cost of having that. Today, there are a lot of stablecoin issuers or planning to be stablecoin issuers in the US because we still have 4.5% in the US rates. When that goes down to 2%, you start adding the compliance costs, adding like your company costs, etc. That's gonna probably become a not sustainable business if you are just issuing a stablecoin. And that's why we see the circles of the world just trying to create networks. We see all the issuers just trying to do more and more businesses because you cannot sustain your business based on the treasuries in the background.
Yeah, that makes the stablecoin issuers actually like a bank.
Well, and in general, all the issuers are trying to become a bank. They're applying for their bank charters in the US.
You want to comment?
Just 2 points is that I think one thing that banks that we haven't mentioned are interested in is the interoperability between tokenized deposit and stablecoin, so that they've realized that they need a strategy for both. Even if they prefer to issue one of the two instruments, they know that they at least need to accept and convert the other, or they may have a dual issuance plan. And then on interoperability, to your point about the 2017 ICO boom, and everyone having their own stablecoin, we already have 4,000 different dollars in the US, right? Like a Bank of America dollar is not the same as a city dollar because they're, again, the claim on two completely different banks. Likewise, you've got e-money providers, whatnot. It's all abstracted away from the end user. We just think of them as a dollar because you've got clearing and settlement infrastructure in the background. That's where we need to get to if stablecoins are actually going to be viable in the long term. I have to be building that, but that's fun.
Right, convenient.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. I think stablecoins and CDBCs, we'll be honest, will probably live in harmony for quite some time. Just to go back to the previous panel earlier, I think it was added on Jacob, the new generation. I've got two boys, one is 8 and one is 13. I just can't see them going to markets, signing up, or trying to get an appointment. So by the time our 13-year-old is going to be 16, he's going to have Revolut app and all the other apps on there. So it'll be quite interesting to see 10, 15, 20 years down the line, which of these digital assets, whether it's a stablecoin or central bank currency, which of those are going to be the most interoperable and the most easy to be able to spend on? Because I would imagine these new generations, when they want something, they want it. So yeah, it's quite interesting we're having this discussion to kind of figure out where is it heading, right? So I know that's not a question. That's more.
No, I think it's an excellent point. Yeah, I think to be honest, what do you say, 20 years or 10 years?
10, 20 years, but
10 years. Let's go with 10. I might not be here 20 years, but 10 years time. I don't think you'll know. I honestly believe you will have an app, or you probably won't even have an app, right? You'll speak to your agent or whatever, or you'll have an automated transaction. It will just happen in the most efficient way. I don't think we'll hear the word stablecoin or whatever. It'll just be different types of money, right? Just like you have different types of currency. I don't think
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's about the proliferation of stablecoin, and that doesn't seem to be a problem. What about the giant fintechs having their own payment chains? Right, so you've got Circle, Stripe. So, what are your thoughts on this as well? Swift as well.
Swift as well.
Yep.
Tether's backed a couple. We've got Plasma, Stable, One Money, Codex. There are loads of stable chains. Sure, some will do really well, others won't do as well. That happens with, I guess, all other blockchains. Right now, there are a lot of chains out there. We need to solve interoperability full stop, and I think that we've got a lot of general purpose block space. I think it's really interesting to see people building opinionated chains that solve some of these problems: single slot finality, privacy, parallelization, etc. I'm all for it. I like to see experimentation, Will they all be here in 10 years? I don't know. I don't know if I'll be here in 10 years. But yeah, interop between chains is important. I don't think that having more opinionated chains is necessarily a bad thing if we've got interop between.
More urgent problem to solve, privacy or interoperability?
Both, one against the other.
I bet I know your answer.
I think technical possibilities are problems because if you see where's stablecoin coming? So I was talking to Access Next View, who was in that project, the payment company. So what is happening? The currency depreciation very quick. Turkey, if you're paying about 70%, inflation. So they get their salary. Next day it's less. So what do you do? That's why interoperability comes. I would have my Turkish lira converted to digital euro. So that's my value states, stablecoin, right? And the other reason why stablecoins are coming is money transfer, cross border, right? So interoperability is the main thing, and the cross border money transfer probably stablecoin gonna be a little bit pushed down when this SWIFT global blockchain comes. And the Cyprus conference, which I here already talked about, then because then SWIFT is gonna take that over because they already connected with 11,000 banks. So
You'd agree.
yeah. So that's done.
Sorry, you had.
So here's a slightly different question, but hopefully on topic. How can tokenization help with the sometimes instability of stablecoins?
Oh, with that effect?
Or the perception that they're unstable?
How can tokenization help with that? I mean, I think the instability of DPEGs largely comes down to regulation and reserve management and the ability to arbitrage between different tokens, but an efficient clearing and settlement system, again, like we have in traditional finance, and sorry to talk my own bag, but that's why they exist in traditional finance, is that they absorb some of these shocks out of the system and provide confidence and mitigate the counterparty risk. And if you're talking about how tokenization support the peg of the stablecoin, well, having tokenized reserve assets that could clear 24/7 automatically run by agents would probably be a more effective way to run a clearing and settlement mechanism. So that would be my answer, would be tokenized reserve assets, whether that's tokenized money market funds or other forms of tokenized currency that the stablecoin issuers can pass amongst themselves as needed.
Just one point to make on this. So we've spoken about digital assets, and we spent the whole time talking about stablecoins. Even CBDCs became stablecoins, and of course, there's real world asset tokenization. There's tokenization of equity, stock, gold, etc. So there's a big landscape. Should the content of our discussion today indicate that for the next 12, 24 months, the big thing is going to be tokenized money and stablecoins? Do you see RWA taking off in that period at the same time?
I think yes, but there's going to be probably, and I want to highlight probably some proliferation around tokenizing equities, not because they're going to solve a key problem on efficiency or something. Equity markets are the most efficient in the world. They're just solving for problems like stablecoins started. People wanted to have US dollars with the equities that are being tokenized. They're allowing people who don't have access to US markets to hold US equities. So that's something that is gonna probably start becoming a big market, but it will just be as big as people that cannot buy tokens cannot buy equities on Robinhood or on your traditional broker, right? That's what we see. And there's also this is coming because it's coming from the crypto world. You need to really understand what you're buying. Are you buying the real equity that has been issued by the company, or is that equity held at an SPV of an SPV of another SPV? And when something goes wrong, you have anything.
Our denominator for most things is national currencies. And so if we want to bring and trade all these different assets on chain, probably need to sort out the cash leg. And I think that's why the focus is where it is. It's because you need a cash leg for every other trade.
Well, thank you so much, everybody.
One more question.
Mostly over time, and I hate keeping everybody late. If for those who are willing to stay, feel free. And I'll let you have last questions, but if you need to go, please, thank you so much for being here.
So
Thank
you need to
for
hand your
staying late.
pass into the corner at the desk as you go up.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so on the centralization side, what's too simple as to why they are under traded, right? So you need like markets, but trading, assets. It's completely under traded. What do you guys think? We talked about interoperability, we talked about a little bit of it's come in, etc. But what is it that we need in order for us to take completely under traded?
You need liquidity, and in order to get that liquidity in the market, you need those assets to be used elsewhere. And unfortunately, today, if you're buying a tokenized bond, you're gonna use it anywhere. You cannot even just drop it at the central bank and use it as collateral. So that's where you need a lot of interaction. Yeah, exactly. So you need those assets to be eligible collateral. That's the first thing. And the moment you can use those assets as a pledge with the central bank, or you can use them in an OTC repo with another bank, then people will be interested into having those assets on their portfolios. But right now they're siloed, they're not useful or anything.
Compared to DeFi, where your crypto native tokens, you've got money Legos, and you can see really complex flows build out of them, which drives more demand for them. So when you can use these real world assets, quote unquote, don't love that term, but here we are, used like that, then you'll see more demand, I think.
Yeah. Thank you all for being here, and for your time. Looking forward to seeing you at a future meetup or workshop or event. Yes, and please take any sandwiches, brownies, fruits home if you want it as a snack or to your kids. Any questions?